SuperTalk Mississippi media production. Middays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. Middays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Middays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music. Morning there, Rhino.
Howdy, howdy.
Well, we made a quick trip out to the desert. Everything was a lot of fun, except the result of the game. Other than that, it was quite the enjoyable trip. Great to see so many traveling Mississippians, Ole Miss fans, honestly, from across the landscape, descended upon the desert, where, by the way, it was cold. It was cold and a bit rainy as well for game day. But we were inside there in the State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. Just a bit unusual, as many times as I've been to the area, for it to be that chilly and rainy. But quick out, quick back, all buckled up, ready to go. That legislature continues to gather up underneath the dome, dealing with all sorts of stuff, bills and so forth. They've been busy dropping them bills, but it feels like that all the focus has been on education freedom, school choice. You've got a sweeping measure in the House, the Speaker's bill, HB 2. And over there in the Senate, a much more abbreviated version of school choice, education freedom. I don't even know if I would call that one education freedom, honestly. What has been filed by Senator Dennis DeBar in the Senate seems to be
It's the one-ply toilet paper of school choice.
That's a good way to put it. I'm still astonished by this floor amendment. That just kind of shocked me. Can you help me understand the progression, just looking here at our tool that shows the activity and the history of the legislation to where it is today? Kind of started out as a bill that would have allowed any student in a public school to request a transfer to another public school wherein the home school, the so-called transfer or school, that's the one the student is assigned to, could not prohibit such transfer. No consent would be required from the home school. On the other side of the deal, you got the receiving school, the transferee school. And as I recall, Rhino, the language says they couldn't decline an application for an out-of-district student to enroll in their school unless they had good reason, is the language I saw in the bill. And, of course, capacity would, I think, rise to the level of good reason, the lack of capacity. But then the next day, if I got this right, an amendment was proposed on the floor, which was adopted. And that amendment rather dramatically restricts those who would be eligible for public school portability. Is that your analysis as well, Rhino, in reading it? There are three categories, the way I see it in this amendment. Those children who have parents or guardians who work at the school. Essentially, they have to be teachers. The bill says instructional personnel or certificated employees. I'm not exactly sure what that means, certificated. Maybe somebody can explain that. Would that be somebody that's maybe a teacher's assistant or something? If you're just an administrator, are you certificated? Like, let's say you're the receptionist at the school.
I think you can be. I don't think you have to be.
I'm not sure who confers the certificate, what certificate or certificates are referenced here in the bill. It just says certificated. I'm reading it. I'm looking at the amendment. Well, in that case, the child could enroll in the school, attend the school, where their parent or guardian is a teacher or a certificated employee. I thought we already had that. In my research, we already had that.
I think that's already statute.
Right. I can tell you that my family leveraged that provision for my son when he was a senior in high school. Totally legal, on the up and up. My wife went to work as a teacher's assistant in the school district, traveled every day, about 25 miles for that purpose. So that's already in place. And then the other is if a child lives more than 30 miles from a school, 30 or more, then they could transfer to a different school. I mean, that makes sense, so you don't travel as far, perhaps. And then the final of the three categories, if your parent or legal guardian, a child in a household, if they are active duty, guard, reserve duty, members of the U.S. Armed Forces, and there's some other categories as well. But basically, if you're a military child, then you are permitted to select a public school outside of the one to which you were assigned by the government. That's the Senate bill as amended. Like in 24 hours, we went from complete open portability to restrictive portability, restrictive to these three categories we just described. I want to make sure I'm reading that right. Is that your analysis, Rhino, as well? I know you read this stuff. You and I both do. You're shaking your head, so that's the way you see it. Okay. I'm just making sure I got that right. On the House side, of course, you've got HB 2, which is kind of everything in the kitchen sink related to education in one measure. I'd like for the Speaker, he's always gracious about coming on our program. I know he's super busy. I would be anxious to kind of do a rundown of the measure with him. I know Education Committee Chairman Rob Robertson was on with Lucian last week on the morning show, but that would be fun. It's my understanding, and again, this is purely anecdotal, this is not official communication, is that HB 2 will make its way into a committee this week, later in the week, and then if it passes out of committee, onto the floor. That's my understanding just from hanging out at the Capitol one day last week and talking to members of the House. Nothing more, nothing less than that. In the meantime, of course, the Senate bill already has passed, and in accordance with the procession that Rhino has created, it has been transmitted, correct, all the way down to the House, where it awaits. Which one of the which one of the transmitters was used for this particular one, Rhino? Was it the Cyclops or the Patriot man on a unicycle?
No, it was the team of people in the inflatable T-Rex costumes on roller skates. They all have the orange T-Rex, but there's one green T-Rex. And they're the Rex, the King Rex. So they're the one that actually does the handing over.
I got to get that right. It's T-Rex. I don't know where I got the Cyclops. At some point, point, I think you actually suggested a Cyclops.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, the Cyclops from Jason and the Argonauts imposes a nice big shadow, and he's got the big club to get people in line. And I tried to put him in with the AI. And if you look in the AI picture of the parade, the procession there, if you look really closely, there's this funny-looking green guy in the background. I don't think the AI quite understood Jason and the Argonauts.
Well, in the meantime, with respect to the school choice stuff, you probably know that by now that Education Secretary Linda McMahon has weighed in and has endorsed the House bill, HB 2. You know who doesn't like it? The Southern Poverty Law Center, arguably one of the most racist organizations in the state of Mississippi, based in Montgomery, Alabama. Last I checked, they got like $500 million from an endowment. So they seem to be more in support of the Senate bill. At a minimum, we know that they oppose the House bill, and so do the Mississippi professional educators. They're all about opposing it as well. We're stepping aside for a break. Mike Murphy, Executive Director of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, at 10:35.
Thank you, Birmingham!
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We appreciate you being with us today. As mentioned before we completed the first segment today, Mike Murphy, Executive Director of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, on with us in the next segment. Here's the deal, and the reason Mike is coming on, we've got Senate races coming up, U.S. Senate races, across the country. They will be contested this November. One of those, of course, Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith currently holds the seat that will be up for the People's Choice this November. Senate terms, of course, are 6 years. It is expected that the Social Security program will be insolvent within that 6-year term. Thus, anyone elected for a new term to the United States Senate in the coming November midterm elections is going to have to contend with the insolvency of Social Security. It seems reasonable that they should discuss that, what their positions are, their plans, their recommendations, their proposals. So that is why Mike Murphy from Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget will join us. And then 11:05, Damian Creamer, CEO and founder of StrongMind. So this interview is a result of interaction I had with Mr. Creamer at the AI4 conference in Las Vegas this past August. I attended a session concerning artificial intelligence in education, and Damian's company, StrongMind, provides not just artificial intelligence-powered tools for education, but lots of other educational systems as well. And I thought it makes sense to get him to join us to talk about his company's technology and why we should be thinking about incorporating that in Mississippi's educational systems. I was very impressed with the tools that he presented in a one of the breakout sessions at the AI4 conference. So looking forward to that. You know, Rhino, some of these superintendents across the state who oppose school choice are being somewhat outspoken and vocal. One of those is down there in Biloxi, the Biloxi Public Schools, Superintendent Marcus Boudreau. Not so long ago, he participated in a community discussion about choice, and he argues against it. He is no surprise there. Seems like that is the prevailing attitude and position among superintendents of the public schools in Mississippi. And he says, quote, "I'm very much not in support of school choice for two reasons. So if you know anything about school choice, it's really kind of two components to it. One of those is public money going to private schools. The second is public-to-public school transfers." He says that he believes public money should remain with public entities. Quote, "Private schools don't have to follow the same rules that public schools do. For example, we have to enroll every single student regardless of who that student is, regardless of what their needs are. We have to provide them with what's called a FAPE, F-A-P-E, a free and appropriate public education. We have to abide by non-discrimination laws, I.D.E.A. special education laws." He said that public schools have to have state accountability and state assessments while private schools do not. Quote, "We're held to such a high standard. We have to go through fiscal audits to make sure that we're following state purchasing and procurement laws," which I might just add are a joke. Private schools are not going to have to do any of that, but they will get the exact same money. Where do you start with this nonsense here, Rhino? This is a person, like so many, who somehow have this idea that government and government regulation is superior to market regulation, which is choice. You don't like something, it's not producing results, value, outcomes, you go somewhere else. And somehow we've gotten to the point where, oh no, we got to step in and protect you. That's why health care is so damn expensive, right? It's exactly why. Oh no, you can't buy that insurance. You can't buy that $1,000 a year insurance. You got to have this $25,000 a year insurance. We're protecting you. That's what I feel like this is. I know I'm getting fired up because I'm tired of this old argument that makes no sense. What it says is, you parents, you don't know what you're doing. You might choose a school that produces a bad outcome. Because, see, here we have standards, which are a joke. They're about as accurate and reflective of reality as the BLS's labor force participation rate. A joke. Now, and this isn't a slant and or knock on the public schools, because you know there are people out there saying, Gerard hates public schools. Horse hockey. That's not at all what this is. What I hate...
In fairness, the people that say that are the same people that get spoon-fed everything they're supposed to think and everything they're supposed to be enraged about because they haven't had an original thought since they turned 12.
And unfortunately, you're right about that. It's how much stock can you put in someone who seeks to protect their domain on a matter that might cause them to have to compete? Well, of course, if you're in that world, you want to protect it. I need government to come in and put their boot on the market to restrict. Yeah, that's what we need. How's that working out? Not too well, in my view. So, this idea that we would set back education in Mississippi, which is what he's now saying, if we allow people to choose, man, that somehow restriction, compulsion, limitations are better than options, freedom? Where did we go wrong to not understand the basic principles that created this country, that made it so strong and powerful and prosperous? And the other nonsense is we can't spend public money on private entities. He's from Biloxi, right? What's close to that? I know I brought this up before, but it bears doing. The state's largest employer, Ingalls. Where does that money come from that pays for the ships they turn out there? The public.
Yeah, they're not building yachts.
Good grief. I've actually had discussions over the weekend about this where people try to make the case that this same point, the same objection, we can't spend public money on goods and services from the private sector. And I just pointed out, because it's recent, what we just did in Venezuela, capturing Maduro, bringing him back, all done flawlessly. You know where I'm going with this. What was key to that flawless, extraordinary mission? All the technology, all the goods and services provided by the private sector to the United States military. And they said, well, maybe the military needs to get better at technology. Seriously? We want the military creating all this stuff? We want the government to just make, from start to finish, the entire supply chain, the entire portfolio of the goods and services required for a functioning military? We want the government to build, now, I'm not talking about contract with like an Ingalls to build ships, but the government to be in the shipbuilding business, the artificial intelligence, because you've seen now Palantir, who really made their mark as a provider of artificial intelligence to the defense of this country, was used, you saw this, throughout that mission. Guess what? Artificial intelligence housed in data centers is what enabled this mission to go out without a hitch. We want the government to be in that business? I think not. That is really just amazing that people see things that way. Mike Murphy, Executive Director of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, is next.
Here comes the thunder.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We welcome now Mike Murphy, Executive Director of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. Hey, Mike. All right. We trying to get him there, Rhino? Yeah. I'll just kind of set this up for us as we're getting in touch with Mike. So, Social Security faces insolvency by sometime in 2032. And that insolvency simply means that the program will not have sufficient revenue plus reserves to pay benefits in full. You can still pay some of the benefits, but just not in full, which means that recipients would incur a cut to their benefits. All right, Mike, we got you now?
Yeah, I'm here, Gerard. How you doing?
Fantastic. I was just kind of setting this up for us. The fact that the data shows that Social Security will become functionally insolvent by 2032. That doesn't mean wouldn't be able to pay benefits at all. It simply means that it wouldn't be able to pay benefits in full. And so unless there's some action taken on the part of the Congress, that those that are receiving Social Security benefits would incur a significant cut, 25% or so, right, Mike?
Yeah, you got that right. So the trustees for the Social Security program, their latest estimates show that the program is going to go insolvent by 2032, like as you said. But you're right, that doesn't mean it completely goes away. What it means is, by law, what they have to do is they have to match what the revenue is, the benefits going out to whatever the revenue is going to be at that time coming into the program. And we estimate that equates to about a 24% across the board cut, because they'd have to cut it across the board, and that equates to about a $18,000 income cut or benefit cut for the average typical retiree couple at that time. So it's a significant cut that's coming in 6 years, which is, by the way, within the window, within the term of whoever is going to be elected to the Senate next year. So we're hopeful that now we're being within the sort of electoral term window. Maybe that'll spur some more action on this than has been the case so far.
So, Mike, here's the thing that is of concern, and I know this is the reason you guys are calling attention to it, is that there are a number of U.S. Senate races that will be contested in the coming midterm elections. Of course, midterms, every member of the House is up for re-election, but there are, 30 or so Senate races across the state that will be contested. Every one of those senators is, as you say, going to be within this window. Therefore, it's appropriate to make that a key issue for them to address as a candidate, but nobody's talking about it.
It should be amongst the top issues. When you think about the fact that Social Security is the largest federal program from a budgetary perspective, and as you know, we're your budget policy group, so obviously we pay attention to that. It's the largest federal program, but it also serves upwards of 70 million Americans, and it is understandably, therefore, a lot of times at the top of mind for voters when they think about these issues. Unfortunately, it's usually on the other side of the equation. What I mean by that is politicians typically like to use Social Security as kind of a hammer, to demagogue the issue, because it's the third rail, and they like to go out and say, we're not touching Social Security. Anybody who likes to bring it up, they're going to take away your benefits, which is obviously the exact wrong approach. We need a more honest conversation about it, and because it's getting close to that electoral window now, we're hopeful that maybe that can flip those political incentives to get people to talk about it honestly.
And, of course, a couple of years after the midterms, we've got presidential elections. This should be a key issue that candidates for president should address.
Absolutely. It certainly will be within their term in office, too. And so we need a president that is going to be able to, again, speak honestly with the American people about what the stakes of this are. That should be an absolute top presidential campaign issue in 2028. Hopefully we get to that point. It is, and you could see this squarely in the debates. If this is not a question that comes up in congressional debates this year, and certainly in the presidential debates in 2028, about what is your plan? What's your plan here of how you're going to make Social Security solvent for today and for future generations?
Yeah, and something we should point out is that Social Security is a defined benefit program. It's a pay-as-you-go system, if you will. It relies on workers who pay into the program during their period of years of employment. And that actually covers benefits going out to those who are at that point where they're receiving the benefits based on them paying into the program. But we're at a point now where the amount coming in from the payroll side is not sufficient to cover the amount going out to the beneficiaries. Thus, we're having to dig into the trust fund, which is really just a savings account that was produced based on surpluses where you had more coming in than going out. But we're depleting that now.
That's exactly right. You're doing a really good job at clarifying a big misconception about the Social Security program. A lot of people, when we talk Social Security, they just have this general understanding that it's sort of like I got my contributions. Maybe it's going into some account kind of with my name on it. I'm going to get some of my contributions back. That's not how it works at all, as you point out, Gerard. It's a pay-as-you-go program, meaning whoever's paying in the payroll taxes today, in large part, are financing the people that are on the program today. And when the ratio of beneficiaries to workers paying in gets out of whack, it causes problems. Decades ago, there were 16 workers paying into the program for every one person receiving benefits on the program. That went down to 3 to 1 over a decade ago. And it's almost going to 2 to 1. And so that ratio, it just hasn't been adjusted for that fact. And it's creating a massive financing gap that they need to address.
Another common complaint that you hear, Mike, and wanted to clarify that today, is that, well, the Congress stole all the money from Social Security, and if they would just pay it back, that would fix it. But the truth is, as you well know, but for the benefit of our audience, law requires that when the program does generate a surplus, the only security in which it can invest is what are called special issue bonds, S bonds, which are fairly low interest bearing bonds. So it has to loan money to the Treasury, and then it redeems those bonds and receives interest. The loaning of that money actually helps pay benefits. So it's not a situation where the Congress just stole it and absconded with it. That's the law. It's the way Social Security generates a little extra revenue to pay benefits.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And another way of kind of adding to that same point, Gerard, is that a lot of people point out, well, we're just kind of borrowing from ourselves. Well, that's true.
Yeah.
But the inverse here is that if they didn't do that, if they didn't sort of do this, what they're required to do, and issue bonds to kind of take the surplus from the trust fund to fund to the Treasury, government deficits would have been even bigger. So the massive government deficits that we're dealing with already, they would have been even bigger. You would have had to deal with some of the bigger deficit challenges years ago. So it allowed them to paper over, frankly, a little bit some of the bigger deficit challenges. But in large part, and simply put, it's somewhat more so an accounting issue, frankly.
Yeah.
And they can think about how to deal with this going forward. But the bottom line is, both with the big deficits we face as a country and when the biggest programs like Social Security are on a path to insolvency, red lights should be blinking for federal policymakers
big time
to do something about it.
Well, I've thought often, Mike, that the reason you don't see members of Congress really talk so openly about it, and maybe only if they're asked a question, and typically they sort of dodge it and provide rhetorical answers that don't amount to a whole lot, is because the only solutions are painful. Somebody's going to incur some pain to shore this program up.
For sure. To put a fine point on it, often the answer is, what are you going to do? If you ask someone, what are you going to do about Social Security? The answer is, we're not going to touch it. Voters need to demand that that's not the answer anymore, because not touching Social Security means you are guaranteeing that 24% benefit cut in about 6 years. So don't give me that as an answer. What's your actual answer? And so that is, because we're getting close now within the window, hopefully, again, as I said before, it changed the equation. Voters to demand honesty and action on these issues in ways that they haven't been able to do before.
Mike, we got a break right now. Can you hang with us? And I'll ask you a question. I want to find out what you guys recommend we do to address this issue. You good to stay?
Sure, happy to.
Mike Murphy, Executive Director of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, is our guest. We're coming right back on Middays after this break.
Let's start walking. Come on, come on. 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 All this time for me to live, not infection in me.
New year.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We are back in the Element Wealth studio. We're chatting with Mike Murphy, Executive Director of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. Okay, so Mike, this thing is on the table, and we got to figure out what to do. There are lots of questions about the fact that Congress really doesn't even manage Social Security from the standpoint of appropriating funds for it. That it's on autopilot because it's mandatory spending. So Congress has got to act, and in general, anything significant would require 60 votes in the Senate.
Yeah, that's right. And it's actually, so it is on mandatory. It's one of the programs that, unfortunately, a larger portion of the budget is now growing on the mandatory side. With that, for your listeners, from a mandatory versus what they call discretionary in Washington. Discretionary is actually the part that they kind of fight about every few months. They're fighting about it now in terms of appropriations for all the agencies, and it's what threatens shutdowns if they don't do them. But it's actually only like a third of the budget. Mandatory autopilot spending are things that just grow automatically by law. They don't have to vote on them. And Social Security is one of those. Medicare and Medicaid are other programs like that. And another thing that's not a program, but it's one of the biggest growing expenses, is interest cost on their debt, which also grows automatically and is the fastest growing line item in the federal budget.
Yeah, so talk about what your organization, the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, have you provided some recommendations to the Congress on how to address this Social Security shortfall that's coming?
So on our website, if listeners are interested, it's crfb.org. You can find both specific policy ideas that we've put forward on Social Security, but also a tool that we call our Social Security Reformer, which actually has dozens of different policy levers on Social Security, and you can go on. It's a little calculator tool that you can pick the options, and you can see how much of the gap, the funding gap of Social Security it closes. So we have lots of options on there, Gerard. But I can tell you just real quick, sort of some of the top ones, if you'd like, in terms of what are kind of often come up when you talk to different policy groups and people that put forward ideas on Social Security. I would say that there are four big ones. Number one is you look at the payroll tax contribution on the revenue side. So as many people know, you stop paying payroll taxes when you get to about $180,000 a year. There are many proposals out there to kind of adjust that cap so you can get some more revenue coming into the program. So that's one. Number two is, how do you deal with the eligibility age, the retirement age? Life expectancy back when Social Security created was much lower than life expectancy is now. So you can adjust the retirement age for Social Security prospectively, slowly, a month or two every couple of years into the future, and that gives people time to adjust on that. And then the third and fourth options are kind of similar, and they relate to the principle of trying to make the program benefit those that rely on it the most, while asking some of those at the wealthier end of the spectrum to take relatively less in prospective benefits. When we talk to wealthier beneficiaries on the program, many of them say, yeah, we'd like obviously getting Social Security, but we could probably afford to take a little bit less prospectively, and then you can target the benefits to others. So you can adjust the cost of living adjustments, but target them in a progressive way, and you could also adjust the benefit calculations to make it more progressive. You do those four things: payroll tax contributions, retirement age, and a couple of changes to make the benefit formula more progressive, you can solve Social Security for generations.
Where do you stand, where does the organization stand on increasing the contribution rates?
That's another option that's out there. We don't have an official organization position on it, but it's a dialable one that's, the easiest one for people to see. But if you do that, you're obviously hitting everybody equally on that, which could be a benefit if people want to approach it that way. But it's also regressive in the sense that you're going to hit everyone also at the lower end of the spectrum. So if you adjust the cap at the higher end, you're obviously focusing that a little bit at the higher end of the spectrum to try to make the changes a little bit more progressive.
Yeah. Pivot a bit to the deficit, something you guys write about, talk about, and educate folks on quite a bit. Just released a report a couple of days ago showing that for the first 3 months of fiscal year 2026, our deficit seems to register in at about $601 billion. That's not very promising as far as reducing deficits annualized. That's more than $2 trillion a year.
No, yeah, we're obviously completely unsustainable. But the way to look at these things, Gerard, is these numbers are astronomical. They're huge, but the thing you want to focus on is the ratio of how much these deficits are or debt to your economy, because that kind of gives you a sense of how much you can service it. And at that level, we're actually approaching debt levels we haven't seen in this country except for right after World War II. So our debt to GDP is almost 100% as a percentage of the economy. It's going to be about 106% in a few years. Those are the markers that we look at more as opposed to what the nominal number is, because you really want to bend that ratio to make it so that your debt is not growing faster than your overall economy, which is what the case is right now.
Gotcha. We got to go, but I wanted to put this in there coming from the private sector. This is exactly, to your point, the way lenders handicap and underwrite loans. It's all about your debt as a ratio to your EBITDA, your profit, your revenue, lots of other things. Mike, appreciate you coming on, man. Really enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Gerard, for having me. Appreciate it.
We're stepping aside for Fox News SuperTalk News. Damian Creamer with of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transition now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Hour 2 of Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We thank you so much for joining us. It's Monday. That means we have a 2-hour show. Ricky Matthews, Super Talk Outdoors, will be live at 12:05 today. But right now, it's Damian Creamer, CEO and founder of StrongMind. Hey, Damian, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, Gerard, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. So finally able to get us scheduled for you to come talk about your company's technology. We met at the AI4 conference in Las Vegas, and I attended the presentation and was extremely impressed with the tools that your company makes. Of course, now you have, as everyone else have, you have powered your tools with artificial intelligence, but your organization has a history of delivering a tool specifically for homeschooling. Talk about that.
That's correct. Yeah, so we got started back in 2001. I had a real passion for at-risk students, and I started a charter school back in 2001. Kind of bootstrapped the whole thing, second mortgage my house, the whole entrepreneurial story of going out there and starting something. I just wanted to help kids that were at risk. And, we have been very fortunate in that organization. We have educated over the last 25 years more than 250,000 students throughout Arizona. And I don't know how many more throughout the United States, but lots. And, we got started to help at-risk kids, and in 2003, the state decided that they wanted to pilot online education, and so they chose 5 schools that they would pilot this online learning platform, and we were one of those schools to get chosen for that. And so when we started, I would say the tools back then for delivering online education were really terrible. There wasn't anything that was really exciting or anything like that. Basically, we could put an online syllabus online and communicate through a discussion board with students. But nevertheless, there was a huge amount of pent-up demand for online education. And so we started StrongMind. StrongMind was really was founded out of necessity, because the tools for delivering high-quality digital learning to students throughout, in remote areas just weren't there. One of the things that we really got started on was developing the content and the curricula, and that's been a process. 25 years, we're still doing that. We develop digital content. We sell that throughout the United States to schools that are leveraging online learning or distance learning. Digital learning is what a lot of people call it, and that's quite a process. And so, 3 years ago, when ChatGPT came out, I was really unaware of it, to be honest with you. And one of my guys told me, "Hey, have you seen this new app? It's really interesting." And I said, "No, what does it do?" And he's like, "Well, you can write something, or you can ask it to do something, it'll write something for you." And I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And he, "I don't know. Why don't we write our wives a love poem?" And I'm like, "Okay." So we tried it, and all of a sudden, boom! Like I looked at that, and immediately, Gerard, it was the light went off, and I just said, "Okay, that's it. Like, stop everything. We're going to pivot hard. I see where this is going." And the next thing I did, I started playing around with, can this thing write a lesson plan? And by golly, sure enough, it kind of wrote a lesson plan. And well, can it write a piece of content? Let's see if it can write the quadratic equation. Can it teach quadratic equation? And it did an okay job. But what I got to tell you, Gerard, is over the last 3 years since this came out, the technology has evolved from orders of magnitude, and where it's at and what it's going to be able to do. What we're doing right now with the technology is unbelievable. So, as I mentioned, we develop state-aligned digital content for online courses, and that is an unbelievable undertaking. It takes quite an army of people who can do that. We wrote a platform that will write the content on our behalf. Now, everything is overseen by human beings, quality assurance, quality controls, everything. You cannot let this go by itself. You need to have human beings that are in there, but we've been able to scrape all of the standards from all 50 states. There's over 1 million of them if you get down to what they call the child standards. And then we've been able to take the different paradigms for developing curricula, like Madeline Hunter's, Bloom's taxonomy, depth of knowledge, you name it, mastery-based learning, competency-based learning. And we've designed tools so that we can develop all of this content automatically. And our people still have to quality control it. But so here's what's really unique and interesting about where we're headed with this. And we've seen a lot of people in the space for the last 3 years. Everybody seems to be slapping AI on their website, and all of a sudden we're AI this, we're AI that. But it's interesting because everybody who's got an iPhone right now or a smartphone in their pocket, they've got ChatGPT on it. You're going to be able to get answers to anything, and people are really concerned about our students going to be cheating and this, that, and the other. We can get into that. The reality is, though, what we're doing that's unique is we store all of this content into a learning object repository, and that's a massive database, and it's stored all the way down to what we call the learning objective. And that allows us to be able to assemble courses based on what a student needs on the fly. And so we're actually developing a generative learning system which will deliver a generative learning experience. And so it's all really techy and high tech and all that good stuff. But what it really means is that the AI inside of the system, we have a lot of data on our students just because of the enrollment application, whether or not they've got special needs, if they've got a disability, what type of modifications and accommodations they need in order to educate those students. And we're able to take everything in that learning object repository, and based on what we know about the student, we're able to take a standard aligned course and modify that course directly to the student's needs. So where I think it gets really, really exciting is that online learning has kind of been tagged with a bad, and rightfully so, it's been not as effective as it should be. And I think this is the first time that I've ever seen in my close to 30 years of being in this space to where the promise of what digital learning is actually going to deliver is going to be really, really high quality digital learning. And then we need to worry about, our teachers and where do our teachers fit into this equation? And the reality is, we employ hundreds of teachers, and our teachers are the differentiator. I'll tell you, Gerard, on our reviews online and everything, when people are telling us about what they like about our schools and whatnot, it's never the technology and it's never the curriculum. Yeah. It's always the teacher. And so we're going to figure out how to make sure that we don't, displace all of our teachers. Our teachers need to be there in order to teach our students.
So, Damian, at the conference, as I recall, you guys had done a great job of presenting your AI learning companion, as I recall, Lexi. Is that the name? Yeah, and that's what caught my attention. I was so impressed with that. It made so much sense, and you made the point. Look, this is not a substitute for a teacher. It's designed to augment a teacher in the classroom, and it learns the student and where maybe they need some help and what they're good at and what perhaps they're falling behind on, and it kind of fills the role of one to just combine with the teacher to help that student. Talk about that.
Yeah, for sure. So Lexi, her name, Lexi, and we humanize it. I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but it stands for learning experience. And Lexi has different modes. One of the modes is I'll talk about 3 of the modes that Lexi has, and they're actually independent agents inside of the system. It's not what would you call it, a multi-agentic platform. It's specific agents, all under the name of Lexi, and they have different modes. One mode is for the students, and that is Lexi understands a lot of she understands a lot of the student. Who is the student, what the student's dealing with, and she has access into the learning object repository. So as she is helping to provide instruction to that student, she can take the components that are out of the learning object repository and modify those on the fly so that she can deliver directly to the student. So I'll give you one example. One of our students was having a problem with math and did really poorly on the exam, and told Lexi, hey, I'm just kind of frustrated. I can't get this and whatnot. And Lexi asked the student, do you like music? The student said, I do like music. What do you like? Who's your favorite musician? I think it was Juice WRLD or something like that. I wouldn't know these musicians. And she said, great, Juice WRLD. Well, I can teach you the zero property of algebra using Juice WRLD, and then did. And so there's that opportunity to continuously meet the student where the student's at, to present to the student, to help the student persist.
Hey, Damian, we got a break. We got a break right here. If you can hang around, we can keep talking. You good?
Absolutely.
All right, we'll be right back.
We all hear the radio ads.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Let's go.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio. We're visiting with Damian Creamer, CEO and founder of StrongMind. So, Damian, I wanted you to continue to discuss this the AI learning companion, Lexi, that you have. And honestly, just so you know, there are a lot of folks that are involved in making laws in the state of Mississippi, members of our legislature that tune into this show on a regular basis. And, of course, as you well know, education tends to be the biggest spending category in state budgets. The states are responsible for providing education. And so I'm wondering if there's a place for this in public education in the state of Mississippi, really private education as well. I was so impressed with it. It just made so much sense, because one of the problems that you pointed out that I think most people who have raised children through their school years are well aware of, teachers have limited bandwidth, and all students don't learn the same, and what happens in a classroom may not be sufficient and adequate for every student. They often need something special, something unique, something different outside of the classroom, and that's where it looked to me like your technology could be effective.
Yeah, and I would say, research shows that teachers are one of the highest burnout jobs in the entire country, and it's not because they don't like working with kids. It's because everything else that goes into working as a teacher is just overwhelming. People think that teachers go to school from 8 a.m. in the morning until 2:30, but that's they're just getting started at that point in time. Now they got to go home and they've got to grade, and they've got to, most teachers are working 55, 60 hours a week just to keep up. And they do it because they love the kids and they want to make sure that these kids are well taken care of. And so supporting teachers has got to be at the highest priority that any of us have when we're working in this type of technology. I see this technology as something that can support teachers dramatically. This technology, yes, it can help write lesson plans. Yes, it can help write curricula. Yes, it can help in providing with instruction. No, it will never supplement the human being, the teacher who is in there, the person who is working with these students. And so you need to be able to work and blend these two. One of the modes that we have with Lexi is a teacher mode, and that is helping the teacher to grade assignments. AI is never going to ratify a grade. That's not the place for AI, but it can help get through the 150 some papers that a teacher needs to grade every single week. And it can help the teacher so that she can be able to make more, can be able to provide more substantive feedback to the student. There's a lot of things that AI is going to be able to help inside of education, and there's a lot of areas where it could go dramatically wrong right there. People talk about cheating, for example. Kids are going to be cheating with AI. I've got news for you. Every single paper that is written today is most likely written by AI. And no, you're not going to be able to prevent students from using AI or even catch it. There's a lot of platforms out there that are talking about like, oh, we'll catch AI. It's like, actually, you can't at this point in time. That just doesn't exist. Somebody put the U.S. Constitution through one of those platforms, and it came back 98% of it was written by AI. So it's becoming very, very difficult. But some of the things that we're doing to prevent this is we've created the editor, the WYSIWYG editor, right inside of our platform. And so there's different modes that the student needs to go through because we want them to persist, we want them to struggle so that they are learning, they're using their own mind. And we do not allow them to copy paste anything from outside of our platform inside of the platform. And when AI writes inside of our platform, AI changes, it comes in a different font size, italics, and a different color. And so we know what is AI and what is not there. And we allow the student to work with AI as a writing coach in order to help that student learn how to write. So there are ways. We just have to think through these things. You have to use a little bit of you got to use your noggin to think through how are we going to leverage this technology and work along with it. For example, how do you put a teacher back into the center stage in a digital classroom? It's very difficult. And that's been one of the biggest problems with online learning is that the teacher is always adjunct. It seems like the teacher has always been adjunct. It's like the student logs in, they've got their content, their curricula, they've got their assessments, and then you've got a teacher off here out in left hand. And good luck, trying to reach that teacher. Yes, you can do Zoom conferences with the teacher, and they should, and all of these things. But you have to use a couple of, we've thought carefully, how do we put that teacher front and center back in front of that classroom? And with a couple of design decisions, we've been able to do that. We want the teacher to be there. She's the main ingredient in that class, and she understands that, the content, the curriculum.
Yeah, and this is an issue, is it not, Damian, that's really, it's confounding the educational industry and community, and it's of significant concern to parents and society in general that our students become too reliant on AI, and they're able to make their grades and continue to progress through their education, but something else is doing the work for them. So they're not learning the critical thinking skills that they need to thrive as an adult, but there's a way to use AI to actually enhance that critical thinking education.
Correct. Yeah, we were really concerned with that as well when we first started this. We thought, how is this going to work? Are these kids just going to be, just prompting everything? If you ask a student to write a paper, you've given that student a prompt. What prevents that student from taking that prompt and uploading it into ChatGPT? Really nothing, to be honest. And so you have to think through this, exactly what is learning. And a lot of people talk about schooling and the K-12 educational system, and we're kind of backing that up and thinking about learning and cognition. How do students learn? what the students need to learn, what is changing in the way that kids are going to be, how is the world changing, and how do they need to be able to position themselves so that they're going to be successful. And I really think that with the generative learning system that we've created and the learning object repository, it allows for all of the standards to be taught. It allows for the curricula to be personalized to the student, and it allows for the teacher to be interjected directly back into that digital learning space. When it comes to parents, for example, in the homeschool side of this, we're heavily involved in the homeschool education. We have a mode, Lexi has a mode where she assists parents, and the parents are really, parents are one of these, it's tough being a homeschool parent. A lot of people don't do homeschooling because, and I don't know, did I lose you, Gerard?
We got you. We just lost your video. We got your audio, though.
Well, I'll keep talking then.
Yeah, sure, you're good.
I would say with parents, a lot of things that prevent parents from homeschooling is that it's just really hard, and they're afraid that they're not going to be able to do it well.
Yeah.
And so we created Lexi so that Lexi can be a parent resource as well, and help the parent understand exactly what they need to what they need to do each and every day in order to educate the child. So a lot of it is online, a lot of it is offline, but Lexi's there to help the parent. Hey, today, these are the activities that we think you should be working on with your child. Here's some offline activities for your child. Here's some online activities. And it all changes based on the child's age or grade band, if you will. Students should not be in front of a computer all day long. They should be outside. They should be learning from their environment. There's a lot of this. And so we don't want to see students sitting behind a computer all day long either.
Damian, the matter of education freedom, school choice, is really top of the list of issues our legislature is deliberating this year. This is not the first year that this has come up. As you're well aware, the surrounding states to us here in Mississippi have implemented robust universal school choice programs, but we're still without one. We have school choice for children with dyslexia and special needs, and we have some limited charter school options, but that's really about it. What's your feeling about that? Do you have any position on school choice, education freedom?
Absolutely, because I've been in the space my entire life.
Yeah.
I've always told people I'm not anti-public school at all. I'm a product of the public schools. I want our public schools to thrive. I want our public schools to succeed, to be honest with you. But I believe that competition is a good thing for all of us. And, when you allow the private sector to come into the public space and to educate students, they're going to be held responsible and accountable to the same accountability that public schools are as well. But they have this ability to innovate and to try things and to make sure that they're bringing in a more robust ecosystem for all of our students, because a one-size-fits-all educational system only fails a lot of students. We need to have a very robust school choice option for all of our students throughout the United States.
Appreciate it, Damon. Thanks so much for joining us today, and let's stay in touch. I track your company's work on your website. It's excellent. The tools you've created are fantastic, and you guys are really innovating in the education space. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. Best of luck to you.
Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Middays with Gerard Gibert
It is on
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Well studio. The technology that company has really is pretty neat. The StrongMind technology that provides sort of a personalized instructional companion to help those students that maybe are facing challenges with certain subjects or even certain lessons within a subject and often are hesitant to approach a teacher for special help that would have to come after hours, after the class itself. Teachers are overwhelmed with lots of said requests. This is a smart use of artificial intelligence, in my view. This isn't replacing the human teacher in the classroom. I don't support that. But in an augmentative role, I think it makes perfect sense. On the C Spire text line, we had a couple of people that said, let's see, Paula Meridian says, don't you love how Social Security is going to run out of money, but welfare never does? Well, we can move to Ukraine since we shored up their pensions plan. That says Jerry in Waynesboro. Actually, not exactly as reported there, Jerry. And then someone else said something about the welfare situation in that we seem to have money for that. I can't find it now. But nonetheless, the difference is, just to kind of close out the Social Security subject, the difference is that the welfare programs, they are mandatory spending, just like Social Security is mandatory spending. It's not that we run out of money. It's that we'd have to change law to borrow money, which is how we are able to fully fund all the various welfare programs. It's because we borrow money. That's why we have debt at $38 trillion. It's why our deficits are on a pace to clock in at about $2.2 trillion this year. It was $1.8 trillion last year. We're not cutting spending, despite what you may see and hear. And revenues are unable to keep pace. But it's really a function of law. So, sure, we could go borrow money to ensure that Social Security is able to meet all of its benefit payment obligations. That's ultimately what I think will happen. But it's not the fiscally responsible way to handle it. I'll just put it that way. Interest payments, by the way, this year are now at an annualized $1.47 trillion. This is based on the latest report from the United States Treasury. That's incredible to think about. So we went from, as I recall, back before the president's first term, it was about $300 billion a year, and now it's quadrupled, almost increased by a multiple of 5 this particular year. That's 10 years. So we've gone from $300 billion to nearly $1.5 trillion, and with no end in sight when you're generating $2 trillion deficits. But also, to Ben from Madison had a question here. He said, may not have time for it today, but with the shortened show, but what are your thoughts on the president's requesting Congress to increase the defense budget by 50%? Appreciate the question, Ben. I don't think that's gotten a lot of attention in the news and the media, but last week, I think it was Tuesday, he came out on his Truth Social, which is how he typically likes to communicate. On social media, he came out and demanded that defense companies discontinue the practice of stock buybacks and issuing dividends to their shareholders. Also called for a cap on executive wages at $5 million for those who are in the C-suite of these various defense companies or defense contractors to the United States. He called for that, and their stocks immediately plummeted. And it's because he says they're behind on delivery of some projects. Now, I haven't dug into the details of specifically what projects the president's referring to, and he didn't get into the details either. He didn't disclose that, just said in general. But then the next day, he did, as Ben points out. He says he wants to increase spending on defense by $500 billion from its present level of just under $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion. So that's a significant increase in spending, 50%. So I don't know if you guys tracked the defense stocks, Rhino, but they immediately shot back up. So they sold off when the president said no more stock buybacks, no more dividends, and cut your salaries for your executives or cap them. And the next day he said, by the way, I'm going to give you another $500 billion, and the stock shot up. So I'm a little confused by that, Ben, and I'm not sure if any of that is actionable, honestly, by the Congress. I don't support, honestly, to tell you the truth, the Congress passing spending legislation that is discretionary. So the Congress does, in fact, appropriate money to the Department of Defense. It is not, unlike Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, it's not mandatory. Congress has to appropriate it. That's why we shut the government down and why we argue for a couple of months, as we did last fall, because they couldn't agree on what those spending levels should look like and what they should be, what our money should be spent on from a discretionary perspective. So I guess the point is, Ben, to your question there, yeah, we could spend another $500 billion, but that just increments our debt. We don't have it. We'd have to go borrow it to spend more money on the military. As we've said so many times before, I think the military ought to show us what they bought for all that money we sent them, because they continue, that does the Pentagon, to fail just reasonable audits of where their funding went. They can't seem to produce the various assets and the targets of the money we sent them in a way that would fly through an audit. That's a disturbing thing. And then the other thing that the president called for is a cap on interest rates charged by credit card countries. Wants to limit that to 10%. And again, he cannot do that with executive order. That doesn't mean that he won't attempt to. And at this point, it's just, we could call it a friendly request. But after that, aboard Air Force One, talking to reporters, he actually said if credit card companies do not lower interest rates to 10% by January 20th, and that's next Tuesday, then they are in violation of the law, very severe things. They really abuse the public. I'm not going to let it happen. I disagree with the president on this. I just think that government intervention in the market, as is being suggested here, it generally speaking, no, not generally speaking, always produces negative outcomes, worse outcomes than when consumers and sellers negotiate in the market square. My concern is, well, who's next? What if the president came after your business and said, hey, look, you're charging too much. You got to cut it. It's the old slippery slope. The credit card companies, of course, charge interest rates based on risk. One of the problems and one of the reasons, honestly, that credit card interest rate is in the 20 to 27, 28% range is because they issue credit cards to those who are not of optimum credit risk. And so the responsible people end up paying for those that pay interest on their credit card balances. They end up paying the cost for those who have credit cards, part of the same pool, if you will, that aren't responsible. It's the same, right? It's tantamount to the insurance dynamic, is that you've got lots of sick people, right, that are in the pool. You got lots of healthy people, and the healthy people pay and buy insurance and pay into the pool, if you will, to cover the cost associated with the health care delivered to the sick people. Now, we're all subject to getting sick. I don't want to say that that's always controllable, because it's not. The same thing's true with any insurance. If you drive an automobile and you got insurance for it, and you may think, well, geez, I pay all this money for insurance and I've never had an accident. I've never filed a claim. That's right. You're paying essentially for those that have and those that do. And often it's irresponsibility and reckless driving that resulted in a crash that cost money. Same thing is true here with credit cards. So did a little research on that. Credit card companies, their cost of just carrying the paper, just just financing whatever you borrow. I'm calling it borrowing because whenever you use your credit card to buy something, you are essentially borrowing money. It's about 4%. That's their cost of the money there. 6% of their cost are in credit losses and 5% collection and administrative costs. So that's 15% right off the bat. So if you're going to reduce the interest rate to 10%, they're all going to lose money. By the way, their stocks plummeted after the president announced his demand on their part. I don't agree with this policy. What it would mean is that a whole lot less people would have credit cards. Coming right back.
Polly up a Mississippi.
Are we going to do this? Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Middays from the Element Wealth Studio, short show. Final segment on this Monday. Ricky Matthews, Super Talk Outdoors is next. So, yeah, just this 10% cap, by the way, is something that Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders have called for. And actually, what's even more disturbing is Josh Hawley. Is that the worst Republican senator in the United States Senate, Rhino? This guy, once again, you remember when he brought the Visa and the MasterCard, I can't remember, maybe it was the American Express CEO as well, to the Hill and questioned them and got sanctimonious, condescending to them. How much money do you make? Like, wait a second, is this Bernie Sanders doing the questioning or a Republican from a red state, in this case, Missouri? So, just so you guys will know, Hawley and Liz Warren co-authored a bill to do exactly what the president is calling for here with respect to capping credit card interest rates. A Republican. That's price controls. How is that any different than when Joe Biden was demanding that the C-stores go out and just reduce the price at the pump of gas? Remember that? And Kamala Harris running on the issue of high grocery prices. We're going to go after them for price gouging. I just believe that price controls are bad economic policy. This is a form of price control. On the C Spire text line, thoughts on Trump's position on banning investment firms from purchasing single-family homes. Well, I get it. The president is trying to address the affordability issue. That's the big hot word now in our lexicon with respect to housing. There's no doubt it's a problem that housing costs are up significantly, interest rates are up, all that combines to make mortgages unaffordable for many Americans. But there's a bit of a myth around this idea that private equity firms buying up single-family homes, institutional investors, if you will, are the cause of this spike in home prices. In fact, it's kind of interesting to note that many of them actually believe that it's BlackRock that's behind that. It's not BlackRock. You've heard this. Even Republicans. Oh, it's BlackRock. No, it's Blackstone, you fools. You're shaking your. You know exactly what I'm talking about here.
Oh, yeah.
How could they get that wrong? But the average person out there says, yeah, that's right. They're buying up all the houses. You don't even get the firm right. You can't get the company right. But when you dig into it and look at...
It's still not the worst one I've seen it called.
What have you seen?
I saw somebody call it Blackwater.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. The mercenaries are buying up houses now.
Blackwater. Gosh. So these mega investors, these private equity firms, banks, it's just a teeny tiny fraction of the overall market. I know that They don't want to pay attention to that. Everybody's looking for a bogeyman, right? There's the villain. That's what caused it. It's not our stupid policies that did it. It's not the explosion of spending during the COVID era and telling everybody to stay home instead of, building houses. No, that's what did it. And then we've got policymakers now trying to undo it by blaming somebody else and imposing what are really anti-free market policies. So this looks like this is going to happen, but to be honest with you guys, I don't see this changing the price of houses. This is not going to be felt in the price of houses. Now, the president also says that he doesn't know anything about this, what he said. He wasn't aware, but the DOJ apparently is going to investigate Jerome Powell on criminal activity having to do with the construction of this palace that they're building for the Federal Reserve. I think that may be a little excessive. I don't agree with Jerome Powell's policies. I do not think he's been a good Fed chairman. I align with the president in that respect. In 5 months, he's out of there. He's got a short list that's been announced of who will succeed Fed Chairman Jerome Powell. I'm not sure at this point, however, that the correct approach is for the DOJ to investigate possible criminal wrongdoing. Now, Jerome Powell typically has been quiet whenever the president has been critical of him, but he has come out and responded and basically said we still think we were doing our job. I think he missed the boat. I think his policies were bad. Now, the president says he wants to see interest rates, really the benchmark Fed funds rate, which is sitting in the 5% rate. He wants that down to 1%. Actually, I think after the last cut, it's 4 to 4.5% is the benchmark range. He wants to see that decline to 1% this year. I would say, Mr. President, you got a new Fed chairman coming in that you're going to appoint in 5 short months. Let them handle it from there. We are out of time today. Back with you again tomorrow. Until then, stay safe and God bless everyone.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.